presentation of the very dry stats section here, the country stats. And just before we enter into this stats section, some preliminary remark. If you think stats are giving you answers, you might be not 100% right. Stats are giving you some advice, some guidance, but I'm afraid at the very end of the day, you need also to look into your individual figures and your individual statistics. So regard this country stats section as a sort of, let's say, rough indication where we're standing. And this presentation will be followed up later on by the famous indices presentation. Coming later, the rate change index, loss ratio index, both on underwriting year rather than financial year, like the country stats presentation, and even amended this year, a mega loss index and type of loss index. So there's a lot of figures to come. And again, I try to make it lively and sharply what we can learn out of the country statistics figures, where some of the countries have contributed. Before we go into these into the actual figures, some preliminary remark, which I did also the recent times always. What can we learn? What can you not learn is around all the challenges we have with the country stats. It starts with the question of what sort of market segment we're actually looking at. And you see the small little pictograms here. And what you guess, if you learn the average consumption of all these vehicles, you know the truth, what to do in each particular vehicle. I'm not sure about that. And you will see later on in our IMIA rate change and loss ratio indices, they've made a split between global and local to focus a little bit on this issue, that there's not only one and only market loss ratio worldwide. We have many countries, second point here, we have many countries who are reporting, though they're reporting on different standards sometimes. The big question, is it financial year, underwriting year? Is it with or without IBNR and all these sort of things? Some report just construction. Mexico statistics are showing only CR, ER, CCR. In Germany, we have a vast majority of operational business. 2/3 are just operational business, opposite to 1/3 project business. So also the composition is quite different between all these different markets. And last but not least, we do here on this presentation on basis of the uniform currency US dollar. And the little graph on the right indicates a bit the change of currency exchange rates, US dollar versus euro. You see the euro is getting stronger, in particular until end of last year, opposite to the dollar. And what does this mean for our statistics? In terms of premium, I'll show you in a minute. Loss ratios, I guess, are not that much as affected by the currencies because it's about ratios. And last but not least, various regions not reported, same as in previous years: London market, Middle East, North Africa, Asia. From Asia, we get Taiwan and Japan this year. South America, Brazil only via the ZUSEP statistics, which are also to a certain extent a bit limited. So once again, I kindly ask you to follow it, the statistical presentation here quite closely. However, I guess it gives not only answers, it raises also a lot of questions. And this is also then here the, let's say, the catalyst to raise questions between yourselves and in your companies and in your countries, how to proceed best. And also to get a bit more understanding of what we're doing and what we're not doing here in the country statistics, I did a poll attached to the request of data, and I did here three, let's say, sections of it. Are the country statistics of some value for the community? At least these ones who have reported, are in the majority of the opinion, yeah, there is some value in that. The middle is how much can we believe in the country statistics? Are the country statistics consistent? Are the data set of the contributors in each country consistent? And do you report on financial year losses or on, oh, now my screen does not work here. What's happening? Sorry, no confusion. Here it comes. So in terms of the consistency, there's some doubts in the engineering community about the consistency of the statistics. And the last question is, of course, then, are you prepared to contribute to some improvements? Yeah, 50% of the people who responded did express their intention to contribute. And I will come to that at the very end of the statistic again, how we move with that. So there's some value and some inconsistency, and at least also some interest here. And now back to the normal pattern of the statistics. What have we gathered for this year? In 2021, it's about the statistics 18 to 20. 14 of 19 IMIA countries organizations have contributed. The volume is about a volume of 7.5 billion reported. And the countries shown in this yellow rounded box here, this is all the countries who have reported. 8 of these countries have reported also to the large loss question. Have you got large losses? How many? What size? What type? And all these sort of things, which I then show you later on. So this is where it starts. Unfortunately, we have lost some countries in the past years. On the bottom right, you see countries who have contributed in the past. And I would be very much excited if we can re-win some of these countries for country statistics in the past. This is a very common first chart of the presentation. And you see the premium volume. The smaller red area is just IDI. We've decided some years ago already to separate a little bit the IDI view on these statistics, because this is also a very special market segment, and there's only 2 countries who's reporting on IDI. The premium volume in dollar is quite nicely increasing. In 19, plus 8%, in 20, plus 13% of the countries who have reported. However, please keep in memory these 13%, and I'll show you in a second the euro stats, which is no change but the currency. So this is dollar plus 13% in 20 compared to 19, and this is euro. So you see a significant difference in growth of premium between the 2 different stats, very much because there's many countries delivering their premium and shares and all losses on euro basis, and this has a significant impact in the overall volume. And I see that needs to work out into the future how we can deal with that going into the future. So I found it worth to share this remarkable difference of premium growth. So much less premium growth euro basis, obviously US. The split of the various segments is not changing that dramatically from year to year. So this is again the comparison of 3 years, 18, 19, 20. And you see in the middle here the various lines of business separated here. There's a bit of growth in the projects area, from 44 to 46%, but almost the same volume in the middle area of what I call operational risks. And I might 2 arrows to the little O at the end. My perception is that into that segment comes more and more also what I used to call operational risk, risks, including Flexa, including CUT, not the least CECR risks and all these types. So the question remains if machinery breakdown, which is the losses typically X cut and X flexor, is comparable with the loss development on the CCR side, for example. Nevertheless, this is all operational, and operational, this segment, about 2/2, the major parts is operational and construction. Continuing with the famous chart of the volume of all the countries and their loss ratio developments of the past. And again, this is what I get reported. I would rather go for the tendency of these arrows here rather than to these absolute loss ratios here. At least for the tendency you see in 2018, there's still a lot of red arrows going up, while for 2019, there's only 2 countries left who have red arrows, namely Turkey and Mexico. However, in 2020, they're coming more red arrows again. And again, this is one of the questions we're all monitoring the market developments, hardening market, hard market, depending on where you're living. This gives a different signal here, where the market, at least of the countries reporting into that stats, is moving to. This is IDI, not worth to share too much, just some 2 small contributions in Italy and Spain. I would love to see these figures also reported from the other countries who are having this construction guarantee business, like Italy, like Netherlands, like UK, like others, but unfortunately we are not able to collect it so far. Now we're coming to the claims and the usual pattern of the claims. Before we go to the common claims in the 3 years comparison, I thought it's worthwhile to again update our long-term view. Again, back to the question, what can we learn from the statistics, from the country statistics? I think this is a unique worldwide database since very long. This graph here shows what has been reported. I stress that much because this is what has been reported. That is not the one and only truth. There's also other truths, but nevertheless, this truth shows us over the period in form of this blue shaded line where the loss ratios are moving. And if you ask yourself, do you believe in the trends here? I would guess that most of you would agree that this is very likely the trend we have all seen in the first decade of the century and in the second decade of the century. And now most recently, year 19 and year 20 is going down. So still on an area which is much higher than the average, but at least it's going down. And this is the news of this chart, not more, not less. Much more individual details, and in particular driven by underwriting year. Statistics are the 2 indices to come, which is IMIA Rate Change Index, RC, and ILORI, the IMIA Loss Ratio Index. And I guess we can learn even a bit more precise in terms of what is the actual source of individually loss ratios in individual underwriting years. And I'm also quite keen to learn what has been found out there. Now again, the 3 years comparison, typically rather financial year basis and underwriting year basis. And you see it's a bit reconfirming. On the right side here, you see the loss ratios going down to a certain extent, at least overall, everything. And again, if everything is right, that does not necessarily mean every detail in itself it's right. And I remember from Manuela's presentation earlier today that there was one graph showing the, what was it called, the average temperature increase in 2020, I think it was. it was 1.18% more than the baseline. And the whole world is excited about that. And in this context, I think we also need to read carefully these figures here. They are looking at a quite moderate level. However, there are segments in that which are not that moderate. So this is overall. Large loss ratios in the bottom. Worth to mention that for the overall statistic, there's 14 countries who have reported. And for the large losses, there was 11 countries, and it has reduced to 8 countries who's reporting. So the statistical database is shrinking a little bit, and the accuracy of these figures is reducing. And do not forget the big famous claims we all have noticed in recent past, the Middle East claims, the South American claims, and some of the Asian claims are most likely not in these figures, as these countries are not reporting their gross written premium into this statistic. So overall, split down to machine breakdown and operational risks here. Operational risks are obviously not going down that much compared to the overall. The large loss ratio goes much more drastically down, but looking at the volume of premium to which the comparison is done here, this is quite a moderate volume of premium, so be careful to deduct too much from these relatively low figures. This is breakdown operational risks. Now CIER, and you see CIER, the trend of loss ratio is much more positive, while the large losses on the bottom is increasing. And again, up to yourself, up to your company, up to your individual statistics, what you deduct from these very generic figures, all overall. And this is a moment where I like to make some comment or observation. As our statistics, the country statistics, are basically driven by financial year stats. I think we all know that financial year stats are typically hiding some underwriting year effects. So while we might go down, there's still some underwriting years in a very, let's say, challenging runoff situation. And in particular, in a hardening market, there's some overcompensating of incoming premium compared to what's actually needed for the old years. And again, international markets, much more details to come with IMIA mega loss index, IMIA type of loss index, and IMIA loss ratio index. And I guess there's also some elements of London market, Middle East, South America integrated in these statistics, which gives us a bit more better guidance of what is happening in the whole wide world. To comment the 3 years comparison, electronic equipment, not that exciting, typically a bit lower than CER and operational risks across all countries, and large losses seemingly not to appear at all. However, we all know that most of these electronic business, same as machine breakdown business, is disappearing into property policies or risk. And there might be some hope that it might come back. I've heard some years ago from some property underwriters the famous statement, what we included for nothing, we can also exclude for nothing. So let's look forward and let's see what we can get back into the engineering market in terms of breakdown electronic equipment into the future. IDI, again, very small volume, not that much worth of a big comment here, but if you like to study it, feel free. We're coming now to the large claims development. Large claims development, this is, as a start, first the numbers reported. And the numbers reported are getting drastically down from some years ago, 250 to 93. However, again, don't forget that the countries who reported are also drastically reducing. This is why I put here, next to the numbers of losses, the volume and the numbers of countries who have reported so far for large losses. And you see that at least in the last 2 years, the number is stagnating. If this is a ultimate correct number, that's another question, but at least it's stagnating. And what you can also learn from that is, if you make another calculation, if you count per how much millions of premium there's one large loss, you see much more comparison opportunities. You see even from year 2017, and that was the last I got the detailed information, we have about 42 million per large claim reported to the country stats. And again, this year means 2020, we have 38 million per large claim. So the load of large claims and the number of large claims is definitely not reducing. And I think you all well remember from the mega loss index last year that in particular in the second decade of the century, 2010, 2020, there's enormous increase of numbers of large losses in terms of numbers and volume. And we see later on that much more details in the IMIA mega loss index to come. So this is first about the numbers, and another chart about the numbers. The numbers gives here the average amount per large loss claim reported to the countries here. So you see there's a more or less for the time being a constant move of plus minus 4 or 5 million. So here we cannot see increase in volume of claims. However, once again, you need to complement this with IMIA mega loss indices to find the ultimate truth and compare that with your individual statistics, which we cannot do, of course. This is now cause of loss. Has there any change in the pattern? You see on the top, there's all the various loss causes here. And you can, of course, not talk for hours about the percentages here, but I think what's remarkable is from time to time, you get a larger fire loss. There's one, here's another one. It's ongoing issue with storm, flood, and inundation, quite substantial loss segment here. Luckily enough, the others gets down, at least in a sort of trend, because from the others, so no indication of cause of loss is given in the statistical database is reducing, and that's very helpful. And I kindly like to motivate all those who are delivering these statistics. Please continue with that. Others, we cannot learn from others. We can only learn from cause of loss, what's really happening. And we have seen from the landslide presentation what sort of losses can be produced due to storm and flood and inundation. We heard that. And this is also mirrored again in the operational versus construction cause of loss statistics. On the construction side, you see again storm is much higher and flood and inundation is luckily a bit lower than operational, but this is what I see is into the machine breakdown area and the operational area. They're coming more and more also these cut exposed risks like CCR, and then of course you see also cut mud losses increasing in that area. Unfortunately, still a lot of unknown cause of losses here in both sections. You see also a little bit on the volumes. The total losses in total was last year about 450, of which some 90 is operational and some 350 is CR/ER. So much more in the CR/ER side in terms of large loss ratios. Not surprising too much. This is, I think, what we feel is quite showing the right tendency. The average loss, consequently, is also higher in the construction side than in the operational side. I showed this anyway earlier already. Yeah, we're skipping that. EEI, the electronic, and IDI not showing anything. Nothing happens too much. This is now coming to the end almost. Again, the main items affected this year, the left side, operational risks, ERCR, project type of risks. And again, what we see here on the project type, this brown column is civil engineering works. And this is, of course, I would say, mostly dominated also by cat hazards and not only defects or something like that. And the others are almost disappearing. A little bit here on the turbo generator set in the operational side, as well as on the construction side, as well as on the operational side. Sorry. Yeah, compared to last year it was a much better year in terms of large losses. 195 reported only. On the construction side, this is now 350 reported this year. So again, there's a tendency which is worth to be monitored into the future. And by the way, this is also one remark I share also with all my colleagues when we're talking about statistics. We're talking about technology in engineering. Technology is constantly changing. When I talk to my actuaries, it's always a challenging job to convince them that looking to the back mirror of our last 10, 15, 20 years, it will not guide us into the future with new upcoming risks. We have a working group, hydrogen. We have floating equipment now, remember, of these floating photovoltaic, floating wind farms. And we have many other new types of risks coming up. And we need to be careful as engineering community how to treat these sort of risks on its own merit. And this cannot be done by just actuarially backward-looking information. This is backward-looking. Let's keep in mind the future is changing, and the new normal is in engineering not really new normal. We have been experienced changes since ever in our technology, in our risk, and our claims patterns. Yeah, that brings me to the what I call epilogue. Coming back to the query I did in the beginning, the poll about what can we learn from the IMIA statistics, what can we not learn from the IMIA statistics. So my challenge to all of you is, of course, I dare to phrase it, how to control the dragon together, the dragon of statistics. So how can we get even better understanding, further better understanding in terms of the country stats? We have this working group for all these IMIA indices, and we will, of course, further integrate country stats into the IMIA indices working group. So we need to find much more contributors also from the countries representing country knowledge. And the good news is, if you're looking for volunteers per country organization, I do not expect any big preparation. I only expect some understanding of the statistics you are delivering to us. And then probably we can start working to getting from what is already quite good, even something what is better. Yeah, this is my closing remark. Thanks for your attention. And again, IMIA appreciates your input. It ends with some explanation, and thanks for the time being. Any questions?
I think we just proceed, Dieter.
Yeah.
With Tim Chapman.
Yeah, okay, we can do so.
Yeah,
so just after.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.